Hey now, and welcome to episode 30 of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, well, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. I'm your host, Ruben, and as always, my co-host Stan is on the line. How you doing, man?
Doing great. So,
as kind of a teaser for the rest of the episode, this is the only time you guys are going to hear Stan. Our guest Ridgeback and I kind of just got in a flow and really didn't give Stan any space to interject any of his wisdom. So, what did you think about our talk, Stan?
Well, like I said at the end of it, I was grateful to be the first listener of the podcast episode, and that's how it worked out. And honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was super educational for myself, being, a kind of a novice crypto trader, and as somebody that's very interested in psychedelics. Hearing his mushroom story too was great, and like I said, I didn't have anything to add, so it worked out perfect. I love hearing you two go back and forth.
Yeah, it really did just flow pretty well, and so this ended up, I think, is our longest episode so far, and I hope it doesn't feel like it to anyone listening. We talk about mushrooms and kind of transition into talking about crypto, and I would say for most people listening to the podcast, you probably are into mushrooms. But I hope, this is a podcast and a kind of a connection between the world of psychedelics and cryptocurrency that I've wanted to do for quite a while. And I actually think we kind of nailed all the thoughts I have. So I hope anyone listening, that is a frequent listener of the podcast, if you don't have cryptocurrency and you listen to this episode and still don't, I don't know what to do for you, because I think we kind of lay out why we feel so strongly about it. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Ridgeback. Yeah, so I don't know, just tell your journey into growing psilocybin mushrooms.
Sure. I grew up in a real simple household, and my parents were kind of hippies and stuff, and really just a really clean fitness. My parents were martial artists. I grew up as a martial artist, so it was always fitness and health first, and happy household. Never had any major issues. My mom did get divorced and whatnot, so I have gone through that, but it wasn't like, the end of the world or anything. So, eventually went in the military and did my 4 years, and my specialty there was encryption, and had, just a good life in the military. And then when I got out of the military, became a defense contractor for 20 years. And during those almost quarter of a century, I had to maintain a certain level of there's no drug use. There's, the government does give you polygraphs and so forth. So they want to make sure that you're straight and narrow. And I always was. I was always the guy who avoided everything. I don't even drink. I never smoked. I was always a fitness nut. I always kept everything like perfectly healthy and perfectly straight. Well, a few years ago, the dogma of the government just kind of got to me, and I saw what the rest of the world was doing, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I really like it outside the government. And one of the aspects of that is I don't have to really fear for my job. They don't drug test at my company. And so, the government, they, as a defense contractor, they're always drug testing you. They're always after you. So, and you're always under threat. And in a way, it's kind of totalitarian, kind of scary, but I totally understand the mission. I totally understand what they're up to. So I said, okay, I'll keep myself clean. When I leave all that stuff behind me, I can experiment and do stuff. So I always kept those two separate. So about a year ago, Actually, maybe back up a little bit. Maybe about 2 years ago, I had seen the TED Talk with Paul Stamets talking about mushrooms, just in general,
Yeah.
and that stuck a little idea in my mind. And I've always been someone who liked to try to grow just plants hydroponically and stuff. Nothing illegal, just trying to learn the science of growing. And my dad, he's an old school farmer. He could grow anything, and I was always jealous of him being able to grow stuff. I always killed all my plants. So I took a very I took a very scientific approach, and like bought all the nutrients and did a deep water cultivation system, and just grew like basil plants. Just learned the science of cultivation. Just learned pH and all that, and did tons of experiments. Well, that entire time, the concept of fungi, what they can do, the mycelium, and the ability for trees to signal other trees through a mycelium network, it just kept in my mind going, man, that is crazy. Well, so I started looking into growing mushrooms, and not psilocybin, nothing like that. Just I just wanted to grow a mushroom. So I go on Amazon, and I buy a pink oyster kit and a lion's mane. And I set them up on my counter. I follow the instructions, and my girlfriend's looking at me like I'm some sort of weird mad scientist. And I'm like just all giddy like a little kid going, I'm going to watch this thing grow. Follow the instructions, and boom, pink oyster mushroom the size of my head. I grow a lion's mane that's like the size of a football, and I'm instantly hooked. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So I start looking online about growing other things, and when you Google growing mushrooms, you always get magic mushroom growing. I mean, you're stuck in that world. You can't even get away from it. And I'm looking at it going, well, the techniques are the same. So I'm reading the forums of these guys growing cubensis so that I can learn how to grow, stropharia or something like that, just a normal mushroom. Well, looking around on websites for spores and so forth. And, once again, you have to dig through the psilocybe spores to get to the ones that you want to grow. And I had a hard time growing the normal mushrooms. They just weren't working for me. I was like, there's something wrong here. Mm-hmm. And I saw all these guys cultivating real psilocybe mushrooms, and really easy. I'm like, fuck it. I'm not in the government anymore. I don't have that responsibility. And coincidentally, two podcasts that I follow, Tim Ferriss and Ben Greenfield. Tim Ferriss, we all know, 4 Hour Work Week, and then Ben Greenfield, super famous fitness guy, just super hyper intelligent, and they both mentioned taking psilocybin in microdoses in order to help them cognitively and fitness wise. And I thought, that's interesting. And it just left a little thing in my head. So I'm on these spore websites, and I see the psilocybin spores. I'm like, fuck it. Fake name, Bitcoin, boom, order it. And I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, okay, it's going to a PO box. Shows up at the PO box like 2 weeks later, and here it is. Here's a syringe. And I'm like, no way. So I go home, set up my grains, and I'm following techniques right there on the famous mushroom growing websites, and it worked. And it wasn't much. It was just like maybe 5 or 6 little fruits popped up, and they were pretty good sized. And I took a spore print of the very first one just as kind of like a memorial, and then I had them in a Martha tent. Well, my girlfriend didn't know about it at the time, and her brother shows up at my house. And there's kind of a long story about her brother, but this is the first time I met him, and it was actually one of the first times she met him because they were adopted. And he shows up, and she's showing him around the house, and they come into my little office, which looks like a mad scientist lab. So I got jars everywhere and things growing and stuff bubbling and computer monitors and awesome. Microscopes, and I got everything in there. And he's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm growing mushrooms." And he goes, just like everyone, when you say you grow mushrooms, everyone always jokes, "Oh, magic mushrooms," right? So that's what he says. "Oh, magic mushrooms, huh?"
Yeah.
and I look right at him. My initial defensive, "Oh, no, just edible," And my girlfriend, or he looks at my girlfriend and he goes, "Oh, that's a shame." And she looked right at me and she goes, "Yeah, why wouldn't you grow those?" And I looked at them both. And I'm like, "Come here." So I bring him into the garage, and just pure chance, pure coincidence, I had my first tray of psilocybes dried in my dehydrator. And I pull it out and I show it to him. I go, "These are magic mushrooms. These are psilocybin." And my girlfriend's like, "No way." And I'm like, "Yeah, for real. Look, they're bluing. This is them." And her brother, he's like, "I want those right now." And so all three of us ate one little one. I mean, less than a microdose, right? Little time, like 0.05 grams.
Yeah.
No effect. But we just ate them, and that was actually the first time I ever really ate any of those mushrooms. Now, during this time, I had actually grown a little tiny tampanesis in a jar, and ate that once by myself. I mean, it was so tiny, it really didn't do anything. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't poison myself. Is really, really what I was worried about. But the fruits were the thing that really made me realize, man, I got something here. And he was very adamant that he took some of them home. And I'm like, okay. And he's a grown man. He's not like a kid or anything. I mean, he's almost 40. And he has had a difficult life, I guess you could say. And fast forwarding all the way up till now, because I gave him some more, because I was able to grow more, it dragged him out of a multi-year depression. He hasn't had a job in like 2 years. And he said that he took like a multi-gram dose a few months ago that I had provided him. And he was able to talk on the phone for the first time for 3 hours with a friend of his.
Wow.
And just let it all out. And
while he was on the, or afterwards?
Yeah. Because while he was, I guess, tripping or experiencing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he told me about it. He's like, "Man, it like a hand reached out of somewhere and just dragged him out of this hole."
Yeah.
And then like a few weeks ago, he told me, he's like, "Hey man, I need job advice," because he had 2 job offers, huge paying job offers, and he didn't know which one of the high paying job offers to take. And I was like, "Holy crap." Yeah. And now he's like super happy. He's texting me about his job and he's like, "Oh man, check this out," and I'm like, I can't say that, it was just the psilocybin, but, I know it had to have helped, and I know he does credit it, and he was very interested in specifically psilocybin, not any other treatments. And he's gone through treatment. He's gone through the psychologist and so forth, and in effect, it's treatment-resistant depression, and he was able to drag himself out of this stuff. And I know for a fact that he started to pull himself off of his SSRIs and whatnot. And I know SSRIs are a contraindication for taking psilocybin. So that's, those combinations are not supposed to be mixed together, but he's doing so well that, he may be able to downregulate the need of SSRIs, and he's good to go.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, I told him, go super slow, take it easy. And but I spent an entire year studying just psilocybin on PubMed, and read almost 1,000 studies. And I sent you a link earlier with, I don't know if you're able to look at the spreadsheet that I made.
Yeah.
And and I went through every study for a year before I even ate my first mushrooms myself. I wanted to look at the safety profile. I wanted to look at the effects. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't some sort of strange side effect, and really take my time and make sure that, I wasn't going to damage myself or do anything weird. And like I said, I'm very risk averse, and this is also my first time really taking this stuff. And about let's see, what's today, the first or so, something like that. So it was on I think about the 5th of October. I was on my own. My girlfriend was out of town, and I decided to do a low dose, 0.8 gram. And I wrote a bunch of notes about it. I actually have them in my hand. And so I did it at noon in some tea. And I had these apps on my phone that did reflex tests. And I did that to get some numbers. So I wanted to test myself during the come up and trip and then come down, right? And I know 0.8 really isn't much, but I knew that. I knew it wouldn't be super, seeing elves and things crawling around the house or anything, but I just wanted to, ramp up. I want to start low and just see what the first effects were. And I started at noon, and then I set my fitness tracker on and started to monitor my heart rate and then monitor my reflexes. And I wrote down some goals, and my main goal was to understand the come up, the trip, and the come down kind of scientifically. And I tell you what, that was the best 6 hours of my life. That was unfucking believable. Sorry for the swearing there, but holy crap, that was just outstanding. For the people out there who have never taken this stuff before or just starting or whatever, this is a story from someone who had never taken this before. And
if I can interrupt for a second, I'd like to just at this point tell you how sharp the contrast is from how you discovered psilocybin and ended up taking it, and I did. A short story. The first time I took mushrooms, it was a guy who was at a party that I was throwing at my house, my parents' house, who I was living in their basement a year after I graduated high school. A guy came to that party who I didn't know, and I asked if he had any acid, and he said, no, but I have shrooms. And I said, like, magic mushrooms? And he was like, yeah. And he sold me a bag for $35. I asked, how much is this? And he said, or I said, is it an eighth? And he said, yeah, pretty much.
Oh no.
and then the next weekend, me and three friends split whatever that was.
Oh, wow.
And until then, all I knew about magic mushrooms was from a scene in this movie called The Bear, which is like a live action wildlife movie. And the bear eats these mushrooms and acts like he's drunk. And until then, that was my knowledge of mushroods. It was a random person who showed up at a party at my house.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, that would be, I think that would, I don't suffer from like anxiety or anything like that, but I think that would probably cause me some anxiety.
Now, I mean, I was also 18 and you're older than that, but it's funny because I'm thinking that here, like, I love that, that's our day and age now though, that you can do that. You can put that research into it. And, I probably would have researched it if I could have at that point, but it's like, well, what the fuck? But,
I think, before the internet, it would have been almost impossible to research the stuff. With PubMed out there, you just type in psilocybin, hit enter, and almost 1,000 studies show up. And then they actually have an API that I connected to, and that's how it downloaded everything. I didn't manually do it. I just pulled their API, pulled the CSVs down, and then there's a hack. It's called a sci-hub.tw, and it allows you to get past the paywalls on all these studies. Because almost all of them require you to pay, and I'm like, no, this is public. This should be outside. This should be out in the open. So I use Sci-Hub. It's a Russian website. It's awesome. and you just punch in the PMID, bam, you get the PDF. You're good. You're good. Real quick, funny thing. You said you mentioned the movie about the bears was your first exposure to like magic mushroom effects. Mine was Super Troopers, when the kid in the back of the car when they when they tell him to eat the shrooms and he eats the shrooms and the cop car goes away and his buddy looks back and like, hey man, you're gonna have to pay for all those.
The schnozberries taste like schnozberries.
Exactly. I didn't have that effect, but I was kind of hoping I did, but I didn't. but yeah, it's having the internet available was just such a fantastic asset when trying this stuff. And I'm not saying experiment, although I was experimenting, but I knew what I was doing in terms of medical. So, I'm using research from 1955 to 2018, and I'm able to pull the actual dosages, the actual experiences that people had from these studies. And I knew exactly on the map where I wanted to drop myself. And I tell you, I hit that home run just absolutely perfectly. And the effect of it was so fascinating. It took me about, let's see, I'm looking at my notes. I started at noon exactly. My first effect was exactly 58 minutes later. And my heart rate went up to like 83. My reflexes were still really, really solid. And then my heart rate just kind of went back down to 70. I felt sleepy. And then I just sat outside, I live out in the country by myself, or not by myself with my girlfriend, but I live out in the country. No one's nearby. And I just listened to music, sat outside, played with the dogs. I didn't get any visuals, nothing. But I will say that my heightened ability to hear and see was definitely there. And that was really, really interesting. The effect I could describe would be everything went quiet in my mind, and I could hear bugs that I'd never heard before in my backyard. That's how quiet the mind got for me, and my hearing was. And the slightest little motion, like in a leaf or in like even like the fur on my dog, my eyes and my head could snap in 3 directions and stare at it and instantly analyze it and know what was going on. And I had read or heard about ancient hunters feeding their dogs psychedelics in order to make the dogs better hunters. And I could certainly see that being an enhancement for warfare, for fighting, for hunting. I mean, it would last, 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours. For me, it lasted 6 hours. And it was just, it felt so good too. I had the ability to think about thoughts, which was one of the most fascinating effects. A thought would come in, I could freeze it in my head, and then step around it and look at that thought from the front to the back to the front, from the side, and then let the thought process forward, just like a computer. And for people who have anxiety, where they have repeated thoughts, like looping thoughts, where the looping thoughts cause a physiological response, like heart rate or breathing patterns happen, and then those thoughts, remanifest on that, and they start getting worried. I absolutely see the therapeutic use of this, where it allows the individual to stop thoughts. It allows the individual to control thoughts, and allows the individual to examine thoughts and determine whether they're valid or not, whether they're just silly thoughts that don't need to be there anymore. And I was in a state of absolute perfect Zen, basically, where my mind was blank, but I could focus on stuff as I needed. I could listen to music, or I could not listen to music. In other words, I could just turn the music off and just sit there silent. And I think that is just absolutely phenomenal. And I could imagine that a therapist who was there at that point could really do some really good, deep thought work with a person in that state. And I was in 100% control. I was doing push-ups and doing yoga and playing with my dogs, and I went out front, checked the mail. I had no physiological upsets or anything like that. I had perfect balance. Everything's fine. I could have walked down the street and back. No one would even know. So at point 8 is just absolutely perfect. And, you know, I went to bed that night. Everything was great. No problems. Mm-hmm. The next day, I tried to do 1 gram, and I kind of messed that up because I ate with it. I ate a big sandwich with it, and it completely blunted the effect. Because I was going to repeat it all. So I was doing my notes and everything, and I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel it, and then it just went away. I'm like, oh, darn. Yeah. And I think maybe having it in my system from the night before, and also with the food, may have messed with the metabolism of it. So that kind of blunted it, but that's a lesson learned, right? You know, so before, when I did it on the point 8, I was completely fasted. I hadn't eaten anything all day or that morning up until noon. Gave it a try. For, you know, those listeners who want to give it a try or whatever, you know, I do think that fasting is the way to go. And then eat, you know, after you take it, eat something later on. And I remember staring at my food and like deeply staring, and like my face was getting closer and closer and closer to my food. and I wasn't even eating. I'm just looking at it, you know, consuming it with my eyes. My brain is thinking I'm eating it. It was just so awesome. It was just fascinating. And like I would stare at my food, and like I understood the food. Like I actually looked at the food and could understand every little detail of it. And it tasted really, really good. And it was really, really pretty fascinating experience. I've only done it 3 times. And the third and final time was a couple weeks ago. And this time it was with my girlfriend. And I did 1.1 gram, and she did 1. And she's actually done them in the past, so she's actually kind of experiencing this stuff. And within minutes, we started giggling and laughing at each other and not knowing why we're laughing at each other. And it was just a couple of hours of just rampant silliness, just stupid, silly, just giggly stuff. And it actually kind of wore off pretty fast. And I'm still not quite sure why. Maybe it's just because we were active. So, you know, activity increases metabolism. Metabolism would increase the psilocybin processing and so forth, and speed. That's just a guess of mine. But I think just because we were up and running around and goofing off and playing and stuff. The only thing I could say about that trip was we did it later at night, and it started to wear off at about 10, 11 o'clock at night. We went to bed, and she likes to watch movies at nighttime, and I don't like that, but I was trying to sleep. Well, when I closed my eyes, I still saw pretty lucid thoughts, you know, like a thought would come in, whether it's my own thought or stuff from the movie. And she was watching a scary movie too, which is probably the worst thing to watch at the end of a psilocybin trip. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So I got my eyes closed, and there's light from the TV. Well, it's mixing with my brain and sound from that, my own stuff and whatnot. And it made my heart rate go up. and I could like hear my heart rate, and it actually bugged the crap out of me, for like probably a good couple of about a good week or so, and almost kind of an anxiety, not a panic attack, but I'm like, wow, why is my heart rate so high? And I just I didn't like that. That was probably the only thing about that I didn't care for, and I just had to tell myself, I'm like, look, this is just the safety profile in psilocybin is so good, so fantastic, and in the studies I did from 1955 to 2018, I'm looking at my chart here. There's only 4% bad trips, or reported bad trips, or unpredictable events. So that's a pretty good output of that. So, I just spun my brain in a loop on that one, and doing it at nighttime is probably the lesson learned on that. Don't do that, and it took a little while to clear my head of that. And basically, if there's any anxiety, for people out there who have any type of anxiety, where it's physiological, where you hear your heart rate or feel your heart rate, if you just accept it and just it's all it is the amygdala in the brain firing and telling your body, hey, pay attention to me. That's all that is. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing, you're not having a heart attack. There's nothing at all. It's just a little bit of the brain, who I call the Tasmanian devil, and he wants a little bit of attention. And if you give it the attention where you say, hey buddy, I hear you, I see you. Yeah, you made my heart rate go high. No big deal. Oh, you're making my breathing go high. No big deal. Oh, I feel whatever. No big deal. I hear you. I accept it. It's good. And then the anxiety just disappears.
Yeah.
And I did that. And man, you want to talk about like an immediate instant reversal of that stuff. So I hope that's kind of a tip that, people out there could use. And,
you're right. I will add to that though, that, you were only on a gram, like it's still a powerful, important experience. But when it comes to the bad trip component, even if it's 4%, that 4%, if they took 5 grams or 10 grams, is a nightmare, like a living fucking nightmare that like you can't go, my iglobata is, what I mean, you're not keeping notes at that
terrifying.
point, like, I mean, I've on like 3 to 4 grams and stuff like that, I've tried to be like, oh, I'm going to be in this flow state and write, and I'll like start writing, and I'll write the word death, and then I'll be like, and my brain will go, like, oh, death, man, death sucks. I'm going to die someday. I should probably, just fucking kill myself because I'm going to die. Oh, my mom's going to die. Oh, my mom's going to die. I'm going to not have a mom, and it's like this fucking, not even seeing shit. It's just like your brain goes in this fucking, and
right.
It's one thing where like, for high dosage, unless, you're, experienced and you've got good set and setting, you need someone else there, and
for sure.
But I do agree with what you're saying on the lower dosages, which I'm a total proponent for people doing, especially like, I talk about going out in nature and taking like a gram and just like going on a hike, that is good, where if like you get a little lost in the woods or, whatever, just cause you're tripping, like, to calm yourself down, to sit down and go through those things you said. I do agree that's, a good way to deal with on lower dosages, that anxiety that comes up,
Yeah, for sure. The, I track my heart rate constantly, 24 hours a day, basically. And, I noticed, when I slept that night on the 1.1 gram, my heart rate stayed at like 73 all night, like just a straight line, and then dropped. And that's not normal for me. My normal heart rate gets down to like 50 and kind of wobbles around down there, and and whatnot. So it definitely had like a kind of a strange effect on me. But everything's good now, which is good. And it's I think for me, I think zero point 0.8 is like, might be my magic number, because when I tracked my heart rate on that, it was really, really like normal, and everything was like very happy and stuff. So I don't know if I'll actually ever do psilocybin again. I mean, that's the great thing about it is it's non-addictive, right? You take it, you give it a try, and if you don't want to do it again, you don't have to ever do it again. And I've had my 2 interesting trips with it, and I don't know. I think
I think it's great, man. I really do. I think like you said, even if you don't do it again, you tried it, you did it, you get it. Talking to you, you get it just as much as people that we've had on the podcast that have went way down the rabbit hole. You got it. And I mean, much like your girlfriend's brother, probably could have gotten it and gotten out of his depression without the mushrooms. Like that's just what did it, and so like you could have found that kind of gotten it other ways, but those mushrooms just came into your life, like honestly, those spores,
they did.
Just for you to see that. And I think it's awesome, man. I really
thank you.
Yeah, even if you don't ever do it again, like that's a great fucking story, and I'm glad you're willing to talk about it too and come on.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, just the science of growing. So I'm focusing on growing reishi mushrooms and cordyceps and medicinals that are really, really good for you as well.
Yeah.
It's just that entire world of mycology is so fascinating. It's just really absolutely an incredible hobby. And my girlfriend still kind of looks at me in my little lab here and all my jars of grains and stuff. She's like, that's weird. And but I don't think so. I think it's there's kind of a renaissance of the stuff coming through, sure. And we're going to see more and more very interesting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of had it the opposite way, to where your mycology got you into psilocybes. Psilocybes got me into mycology, and I used to I wouldn't even touch a pizza if someone ordered mushrooms on it.
Oh yeah.
Like I hated just canned button mushrooms, and like to the extent that people like kind of, that was a thing about me, people knew, and then once I started getting into psilocybins, and definitely same as you, like, with Paul Stamets and everything. And then my friends that I worked with and stuff like that, and working in the woods, and then like seeing mushrooms and talking about them, like I really got into it. And I haven't grown anything inside other than psilocybes, but which I'm terrible at. I don't know how many episodes you listened to, but like I'm very good at wasting spores. Like I'm just terrible at it. But I started I had some tree work done at my house, and instead of them taking the wood, I was like, do you guys care to help me drag this shit to the back of my yard? And I got mushroom plugs for 2 different kinds of hericium, and like 3 different kinds of oyster, 3 different kinds of shiitake. I found a log with some big chicken in the woods growing out of it this year, out mushroom hunting, and I picked the whole log up and put it in my truck or my car and brought it back to my house. So that's back there. So I'll, I have a already inoculated log.
Exactly. Wild.
Yeah. So like, I mean, and I attribute some of that definitely to my job and working outside and stuff like that, but most of it I attribute to the mushrooms, and it's part of, I don't know how woo woo you get with the psilocybin, but I do think that it's, at a very least, psilocybin is a chemical messenger, created through evolution by this fungus to interact with other species. And I think that's what it's giving us a message is like, grow us, like help us live. I think cannabis has done the same thing. If you look at what we've turned cannabis into, what humans have turned it into, it's an amazing fucking plant now, to where it used to just be hemp. It used to just be this fucking thing growing in the, in a field. And so, like, I think you could make the same argument as a strict evolutionary biologist that THC is a chemical messenger that was developed through evolution by cannabis plants to get humans to cultivate it. And I do think that about psilocybin as well. And I that's what's cool. Like you said, even if you don't ever take that again, the fact that you're growing it and giving it to people like your girlfriend's brother that's in need and needs it. Right. And, if he had read an article about psilocybin, was like, I don't know where to get it. What the fuck? Like, these SSRIs aren't working. Like, you got that to him, and to provide that service, like, fuck, man, it's awesome.
Yeah. It makes me, thank you. Yeah. It makes me really happy that, he was able to experience that and get back up on his feet and everything. And I also gave some to a friend of mine who he had never tried it before either. And he also did a 0.8, and he was in a hotel room in another city. And I said, do 0.8. You're about my body weight. So 0.8. And which is about 160 pounds or so. And then call me when you feel the first effects. And he's like, okay. And so he had never tried them before either. And he calls me, he starts having the first effects. And within like 20 minutes, we're both giggling and laughing about the scenarios. And he's taking pictures of the room. And he's like, what is this? I'm like, that's a tree. And he's like, wow. And just silly stuff. And we were texting like pictures back and forth and like psychedelic cats, and it's just like one of the funniest damn triggers now when we'll text it back and forth to each other just to make each other laugh. And it is a absolute shame that they Schedule 1'd that compound. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it is scientifically an absolute shame, psychologically, in terms of therapy, absolute shame. We lost a good almost 30 years of research because of it. And I mean, I'm sure pharmaceutical companies don't care, but the rest of us do. And you're right. There's some sort of chemical messenger. There's something in it that it repairs all sorts of neural activity. And so I have a degree in computer science, and I have a degree in psychology, and I have a master's degree in computer science. And the psilocybin compound and what it did to my brain, like a software upgrade, it matches and aligns with everything I learned from both disciplines. It is just absolutely phenomenal when it comes to modifying processes, streamlining data in, data out, optimizing sequences, and organizing structured data in such a way that you can access it better and so forth. And it is just absolutely stunning. I can only imagine in the next 20 years what we're going to get out of this stuff. And my friend, I gave the 0.8 to, he said, he calls it the debugger.
Oh, yeah.
And I call it, and I call it the defrag. If you ever had an old computer, defrag the hard drive, it's much like that. And and here's the other thing. This is just kind of a side effect of it. Even though I never told or advertised that I was growing these things, of course, we have to keep ourselves clean. I do tell people that I just grow like lion's mane, no big deal. And I get these messages occasionally on other social medias and whatnot, and they're like, "Hey, man, do you have a way to speak encrypted?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can." And like I said, as crypto specialist in the military, so I can handle this stuff. And we fire up Signal or whatever, and it's a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in like 15 years. And he's like, "Yeah, I've been growing these things for 5 years." I'm like, "Holy crap. I never knew that," So now I have like a couple of friends that I've known forever. They were also former DOD and whatnot. And that's where I knew them from. But yeah, they also grew. And it's like, this is really, really cool. And much to the namesake of your podcast, help find the others. I mean, that's what it's doing. I'm being reached out by friends of mine that either need it, or they also grow it and consume it themselves. And it's a really interesting little network kind of being formed.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to tell people to grow it themselves. I don't want to be a supplier, and I certainly would never sell it or anything like that. And my psilocybin growing, the volume that I'm growing is getting smaller and smaller, because like I said, I'm not really gonna probably consume it myself ever. I may never do it again, but as other people need it, they can have the rest of my supply. But and reishi take up a lot of room too. So, yeah, I mean, there's a fascinating effect. Much like some of those brain eating funguses that control ants and make them crawl around, and the ants are still sentient. It's controlling the body and making them crawl up on the end of a leaf so their spores can pop out the top of their brain. I mean, these things control, and we can benefit.
I think it's more of a mutual beneficial relationship though than they're going to pop out of our brains at some point. But I do think that that it's and it because we're, as much as we want to feel we're individuals, like we're a fucking hive mind, and the internet is making that even tighter. And the fact that, like, if you wanted to grow any kind of mushrooms, you're going to type it into the internet, which is connected to our hive mind, and it's going to go, "Oh, you mean cubensis?" And so it's like, it's there, it's already there. And that's why I totally agree with Stamets' view that like the mycelium built all this. Like us and everything we built, the mycelium built it first. And like, I kind of fucking get that, like,
the people talking about, all right, so let me think about this. So a person eats a psilocybe and he has the effect in his mind. So now he gets on the internet and transmits that thought to someone else or someone else's out on the internet. And now those people go and eat them. So now we just had over the internet transmission of the mushroom thought process that they put in the first person. So, they tell the first person to do something. He transmits it over the internet. Thousands of other people hear it. Now those people go do it. And now they're cultivating. And now that mushroom, the mushroom doesn't know anything about the internet, but because of its effect on the first person, that mushroom is now expanding because of that. And, it's just another network that the psilocybin was able to manifest.
Yeah.
Through.
I mean, it all goes back to, I like Terrence McKenna, I mean, obviously there were some others before him, but as far as like, the internet, that spread that we're talking about, like, let's be honest, it started with America. American culture has spread more through that network than anything else. And Terrence and Dennis brought fucking mushroom spores from, an area where it grew a lot to an area that it didn't grow that much, and it wasn't part of the culture. And to this day, it is it's spreading so much and so fast just from their idea to take these spores and put them in their clothes and smuggle them across the border, has spread to the point where, like, a dumbass fucking fantasy hockey commissioner like me who puts a hashtag 5 dry grams in silent darkness has, a couple 100,000 people watch a video of me talking about doing it. It's spread that far from them just being in a field under the stars with a guide going, these mushrooms will do the same thing as ayahuasca. They weren't even looking for them. So yeah, I mean, and that's what I mean by you getting it, even if, like you said, you never do it again, like you made that connection there, and I think that's the messenger part of them. So,
yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. I mean, it's just, maybe that's the secret of psilocybin is the fact that it makes us all a messenger, and that promotes the species, that promotes the mushroom species. Yeah. So some plants are tasty, like strawberries, so you want to eat them, and then and that transmits the seeds around that you eat, and maybe psilocybin makes an individual. It gives them the benefit of increased heightened awareness and thought and seeing as a benefit, but it also makes the individual want to tell someone else about it, and that forces more spores, more cultivation of the mushrooms and so forth. And you're right about, from my theories anyway, they're found in domesticated animal dung, horses and cows, and quite often, right? So, that's right where humans live, domesticated animals. So they had to have evolved with us a bit, and the ones that had the most effect were genetically selected, because the ones that did not were less eaten, and the ones that did good stuff for you were consumed, and it's just a fantastic thing. And that's the only drug I've ever done my entire life. That's it. And I don't have any intentions on trying anything else, but it is definitely, I am a huge proponent now.
Well, and like you said, even if you don't do them yourself, and whoever you do give your stash to, like, that's going to be an important thing for them, and because you grew them, it's an important thing. Like I've talked about it before, but like I've grown mushrooms plenty of times in my life, and after I quit my job and was being a stay-at-home dad, I was looking to make money, and like I either had an idea or someone told me like, you should sell mushrooms. And like, I was like, yeah, I could, because I got enough people that like, I'm not gonna be on the corner like, hey kid, you might, like whatever. Right, I mean, it's gonna be to buddies and whatever, and, but I was like, I got to charge because I need money. And as soon as I had that thought and that intention, I've like never been able to grow them again. Like I pissed them off, and they're like, fuck you, man. Because before that, I had just given them away, and like I gave them to a buddy that him and his wife hadn't done them in like 20 years, and they did, and they like totally reconnected and had this, renewal of their marriage and stuff like that. And there was all these awesome, moments and connections that came out of me just gifting them. But as soon as I was like, I'll make a couple $100, no, they've just fucking shit out on me, and like, all I've done is waste spores, and it shows, man. It firms up that they're paying attention almost, like it's a message. It's all part of the network.
Yeah, exactly. The intention is there, and it kind of sounds a little cheesy, but there's love and care taken to make sure they grow and everything, and you put that in there, and every day. I always check on them and it's like, how you doing, little guys? And I'm just there misting them and make sure everything's good and happy. And then, if they're consumed or whatever, that love and intention is also, I don't know if it's past, I'm a scientist, so, I don't necessarily believe in like that type of woo-woo type stuff, but I do think that the care and the attention aids to the quality of them, and aids to the cultivation of these, these medicines that the quality of it then gets passed to the individual. And I could imagine someone who was mean and angry and just threw spores together and didn't they're just out for money and they don't care about the quality or anything. They're just making these horrible
Yeah.
output, and then that horrible output's passed to the user, and they're not going to have a good result from that.
Yeah.
And I have a friend of mine who he was taking synthetic psilocybin, and he said, yeah, every time I take them I see these giant spiders, and and it's not fun. and I told him, I'm like, take the real thing, man. I think there's a difference.
Yeah, I've never done the synthetic stuff, but that is, I can see both angles, because I can think of it just like, well, it's just your brain, it's just a chemical reaction, but it's like there's part of that aspect of me that's like, even if it's not alien technology or interdimensional travel, like you can go down that rabbit hole with them too. Even if it's just like what we were talking about which is more evolutionary biology based and plant chemistry, and whatever. I don't know, there's something to it. I mean, there's also like you were saying about people that are doing it for money and it's a shitty product. I mean, that goes for food too and everything. Like the shittier you treat an animal, the shittier the meat's going to be, or the more chemicals you put on plants, the shittier they're going to be, stuff like that. So I don't know, man. It's like I said, I can see both ways, but I do want to try the synthetic stuff at some point. I'm afraid to order it, honestly, but
yeah. I don't blame you. Yeah, I'm super skittish, and OPSEC is high, and I keep, I do what I can, and if someone walked into my house, they would see my normal happy reishi and stupid stuff like that, and it would be a challenge for them to find anything else. And like I said, I'm downgrading the amount, so give me about a few weeks and there won't be anything left. The fondness of growing them will always remain in my mind. And if I end up moving to more of a country location where I'm like even more out remote, I'll probably grow them again just for fun, because one, they look neat. I think they look awesome, and they're fun to grow, and almost kind of like a collector's like, oh, what strain is this? Oh, I want to try this one, and all the different varieties and so forth. And I've grown probably I've probably grown maybe 6 different varieties: Tampanesis, PE6, Ecuadors, GTs. Trying to think what else I've done. That's probably most of what I've done. Yeah, and I kind of grow them in parallel. So I grind them all up. So there is no like, which strain did you take? I'm like, I don't know what I took. I did them all. I did them all simultaneously, and so I just figured that would help kind of level out the playing field. If I had if I had some sort of strange trip or whatever, or strange effect, I wouldn't know if it was strain dependent. I wanted all of them together and then extract.
I think there's a little too much emphasis put on that, but
okay.
I agree with you that it kind of going into it blind and mixing it all together is probably the best way, but I do have one suggestion, man, and I don't know how much you've gotten into like finding mushrooms in the wild, but you should look up and research any wild native wherever you are, like there's probably some mushrooms around there.
I do have a story about that. There is a patch, and it's near a horse farm, and I actually went by
Oh,
and
nice. Oh,
found
there you
them,
go.
and they had thousands out there, and it is literally right in the middle of a city, right in the center of a
That's
city.
awesome.
And I'm like I can't believe there's not like 500 hippies out here just picking them, because it was like easily quarter acre, and you could not step on them. They were just everywhere. So I took spore prints just for fun. I didn't pick any. I just took the caps and then spore printed out there for a couple hours and just got some light spore prints off of them. So I figured if I ever wanted to grow them, I think I got enough spore print on tinfoil out there. I didn't want them in my car. I didn't want them. I didn't want to be traveling around with them. So I just did a field sample out there just to see what I could get. But yeah, they're out there. They are there. Funny thing is I throw my old mic and my old mycelium in one of my old grow buckets outside. I grow mint and rosemary, and just the other day, I don't know what strain it is, but a couple of cubes popped up out of it. I'm like, oh, that's neat. I was like, that's
Yeah.
really, really cool. And they're nice. They're really nice looking. Really, I'm like, man, that's better than the ones I grew in my tanks or my tubs. Yeah, it's nature. But yeah, you're right. I think going out in the fields would be a really interesting adventure for sure.
Well,
For sure.
and around here, the native psilocybe is it grows in like floodplains along rivers, so it's like nice hiking too. You're like walking next to rivers, and you end up getting hit by a stinging nettle a lot because they like the same habitat. But other than that, I won't go into the story just for the sake of time. But there's an episode I have where we're talking about it, and I found a huge patch. Some friends,
No way.
and yeah, and like, and it was it was this spot we used to go to smoke weed and talk about like where we could find these mushrooms, and then they ended up growing right there, and yeah, so it was really cool. Yeah, they're ovoid cystiata is the strain that's around here.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
go hunting every year, and like that's like kind of the only time we found them. Like so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really want to do some mushroom hunts just for any type of just average mushrooms. Like my girlfriend and I will go on hikes, and I find a few like shelf type mushrooms on sides of trees, those type of polypores.
Yeah.
But they don't have too many fruiting bodies out here. Everything seems to be saprophytic, I think that's what it's called, where it grows on dead wood.
Yeah.
But mostly just polypores, like kind of like turkey tail type of mushrooms. But that's about all I'm noticing out here. But then again, I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
So I may just not be seeing it. The only weird mushroom I've ever found out here was a giant. I think it's called a brain mushroom, and they're like the size of a human head, and I put my water bottle next to it, and it dwarfed my water bottle. It was just crazy huge, big white weird looking giant thing. It was just fantastic looking, and I didn't pick it or anything. I didn't know, I'd rather just leave it out in the wild and let it have its fun. But I took some good pictures of it. That was just absolutely wild seeing that thing out there. Never expected it.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like that before. I thought it was like a kid's toy or something, and I walked up to it, I'm like, damn, that's a mushroom.
Yeah.
And it was really neat.
Yeah, no, man. I love mushrooms, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But
they are. Yeah, they're fantastic. They're fantastic for the world. They're fantastic for you. Medicinal, psychological, and just the things you can do with them. And the things that they can do for your garden and for your trees and the health of the soil and everything. It's just unbelievable. One of the things that I heard recently was they were able to, experiment with taking sick patients who had like a viral or bacterial infection, have them spit into some mycelium, and then let the fruiting bodies grow off of that, because mushrooms have an active defense mechanism, and it would grow its own antibodies, and the individual would then eat the mushrooms, and they would intake the antibodies, and they would be cured of their problems. I'm like, that's freaking nuts. I mean, that how awesome is that? You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the penicillin, which like changed the fucking world, was a fungus.
Exactly.
You know, and so like we're running to a point now where antibiotics are not working anymore. Like the answer is going to be a mushroom, I bet. But
I bet it is. Yeah. I bet it is. Yeah. You're right. I think it would be. They'd be fantastic.
But well, I wanted to talk. You know, it's kind of not a separate topic, but you know, it follows the network thing. And I don't know how much you've heard me talk about cryptocurrency. But I know that you're into it, so that's what I want to talk to you about. But I actually I kind of knew about it, but it was a total fucking mushroom induced vision that got me to start investing in Bitcoin. I had this vision laying on the couch with my eyes closed of networks, right? And I just saw the globe and history and trade routes becoming shipping routes, becoming planes flying across oceans, and then becoming wires and all this stuff. And I just saw the economy. I was thinking about money and how the dollar is connected to the euro, and it's connected to the rupee, and it's all this stuff is just this network. And it started from I was thinking about mushrooms, and I saw mycelium grow into all that. That was the vision I had.
Oh wow.
And then I fucking sat up and just said out loud, Bitcoin. Right. And I had heard about it before. I knew what it was, but I thought of it only. And this is why I feel there's some sort of synergistic energy out there between mushrooms, maybe not just even mushrooms, but psychedelics in general and cryptocurrency, because that's the only reason I knew what Bitcoin was I knew someone that bought acid and DMT and they used Bitcoin, and they had to buy Bitcoin, get a wallet, and do all this stuff. And it sounded super confusing. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't want to get arrested, whatever, and it just sounded shady going on the dark web and all that. But that's why I knew it. And then, so I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just letting visions come to me. And I saw this, the globe just becoming more and more interconnected. And that was the downloaded message I got was Bitcoin. And then I started researching it, and actually the first crypto I bought was Ethereum. I've since come back around and been okay, Ether's definitely going to do something, but you need to have Bitcoin. But the original thought that came to my head was Bitcoin. And what's your take on that? About any kind of synergy between the two worlds?
So obviously there was the original Silk Road drug market, right? So back in 2013, when the Silk Road was running on the dark net and people were using Bitcoin to buy drugs and mushrooms and everything, and they spent in 2013. I have some notes here that said almost $900 million. So you're looking at $900 million of drugs. Some of that was certainly LSD, psilocybin, and whatnot. And by using Bitcoin, that put that compound in the hands of users. And these users need operational security. They need some anonymity. They need some security. And so now you have kind of a self-maintaining loop of use Bitcoin, use shrooms, use Bitcoin, buy shrooms, or LSD or whatever they're buying, and vast majority of the Silk Road stuff was for drugs. And so there was obviously a need for the compounds, and that drove the usage of Bitcoin. And so those two things really have a strong initial connection with each other.
Yeah.
And I could certainly see that in 2013, when the Silk Road was running heavy, that there were people who were able to get these compounds for their first time and relatively securely. And they saw the power of using Bitcoin to get to what they needed without basically censorship. So if you take out your credit card and go down to your friendly LSD dealer and he swipes it, and then you get your product and he gets nabbed by the police, you're going with them, because all of that data is monitored by financial institutions and then the law. And crypto, while it is also monitored and there is chain analysis, and they just took down a porn ring the other day due to that, you can still maintain some anonymity, and you can also avoid some of the censorship that goes along with the US dollar. And I think people are coming around to seeing that. And these are the same types of people who use crypto who feel slighted by the government, which, people who use drugs also feel slighted by the government. They feel that they are not allowed access to a compound that naturally grows in a field where cows walk around, and they're not allowed to pick that up, put it in their pocket. They'll go to jail if they do that. And so they've been potentially ostracized or surveilled by the government long enough on their financial methods, and now they can use crypto to step around that. And now we're starting to see full up countries doing the same thing to bypass US controls of the SWIFT networks. The SWIFT network is the big network where all the big banks talk to each other and trade financial data. And the US has a major intelligence stake in that network. And other countries can get booted off of that network. Iran was recently booted, whether you believe in the qualities of Iran or whatnot, but they're booted off the network, and now they're no longer in the main stage of the world. So what do? They're switching their crypto. China's President Xi just said literally like a week ago, and caused a 30% bump in crypto prices, that his country should adopt blockchain technology. And that's a huge, huge thing. And I know exactly why they're doing that, because of the big trade war between our country and theirs. And if they adopt blockchain, they can literally sidestep everything the US has put into place for financial regulations. And as that stuff gets stronger and stronger, and more mathematicians get in and make it more and more secure, you're going to see people more and more willing to both be a vendor and a purchaser of all sorts of compounds and whatnot. And sure, there's probably also going to be like genuinely things that should not be out there, like exploitation of people and so forth. And right now the US dollar is still used for most of that, including terrorism and so forth. So the bad comes with the good, and basically if you stay the course on the good side, it will just dwarf out the bad side. But the good outweighs the bad, magnitudes better. So They said that about the internet when it first came out, that it would just be one giant drug market, and pharmaceuticals sell more drugs on the internet than any mushroom vendor ever
I mean,
will.
if you've got a $20 bill in your pocket that's older than a couple years old, it's been in somebody's nose somewhere,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been passed around to a few people and whatnot, and and in a variety of occupations.
I hate that argument against crypto that it's just for buying drugs online, and it's like that's part of that stigma, and whatever. But and I love everything you just said that points to my kind of idea that there's this synergy, is also just like, they're spread, the reintroduction of psychedelics into our culture and the increase in awareness of crypto has been in lockstep. It also, like, because of what you just said of the Silk Road and everything, but also the psychological stuff that you said, and the revolutionary, like, kind of thinking and decentralized thought. I like to say, that crypto is a decentralized economy and psychedelics are decentralized thought. That you're not a Republican or a Democrat or a Catholic or a Jew. You have your own. You're forming your own opinion because of psychedelics. It gives a different way of thinking, and that's so. So much, there's so many areas that overlaps with the anarcho-capitalist economic view that spawned crypto in the first place. Crypto wasn't created to do to transact drugs discreetly, but it ended up being a perfect fucking use for it.
Exactly. It's a good use
now
case.
that, like you said, that the SWIFT system and the global politics and central banking is falling apart. Well, now crypto is much more useful for being an alternative to that fucking bullshit that's about to crash and burn.
Exactly.
And to even more show the synergy, think of this too, where you were saying that, like, people in Iran and China are going to start using crypto. People in Venezuela are using it now, in these areas that it's hard for an American to think, the dollar's always going to be awesome. It's hard for us to imagine a situation where our dollars in our pocket are worth nothing, and the dollars in our bank account, they won't give us, and they're not worth anything anyway. It's hard for us to imagine a situation like that. But the fact is that's actually going on for lots of people in lots of countries right now. And so I kind of like to think about this, and it's maybe because I'm a stoner mushroom head, but there's going to be a certain fucking, percentage, not just random outliers, but a percentage of people in those countries are going to buy Litecoin, buy Ether, buy whatever. And then while they have that, then they're already over that hump that stopped me from buying drugs online, and they're going to be like, I'm going to buy some of this acid stuff that this band I like was talking about, or whatever is, and the that even the decline of the global economy that will lead to an increase in crypto usage will also, because of the synergy, lead to an increase in like psychedelic awareness and spreading.
Absolutely.
It's weird, man. Like I've noticed that with this podcast and people that I talk to, like they're either like, oh yeah, dude, I'm totally into crypto, or they're like, money's bullshit, I don't give a fuck about crypto, whatever. Exactly. Like, and so I get it. Like, if you've never kind of like tried to combine those two thoughts, but they're totally fucking connected,
Yeah, for sure. And here's a technical detail with that. Silicon Valley is full of coders and these developers and engineers, and they are just, cryptocurrencies is crazy out there. And guess what? Those people microdose like crazy out there, and you're looking at some of the smartest people in the world developing very complex systems, and these systems are so complex that it's very hard for someone who is not chemically advanced to attack. And the microchip was described during an LSD trip in the 70s. The engineer was able to visually see the electrons moving through a three-dimensional structure, and he was able to go, okay, this is how that thing works. And then he was able to go to his lab and design it. So he before then he was unable to come up with these solutions. And I could certainly see the increase in microdosing and causing more and more technological revolutions in all sorts of areas, including cryptocurrencies. And if there's enough people out there who are microdosing, that the demand goes so high that there will be an engineer or engineers who will say, look, we need like supreme security in our cryptocurrency, and we will develop add-ons to Bitcoin or Ethereum that makes it extra secure, such as the Mimblewimble protocol, which is out right now, and it's being tested on 2 networks, and it's designed to be patched into Bitcoin. So we're talking like 100% full security in terms of how much was sent and the 2 parties or more involved, which is absolutely fantastic and terrifying to the government. They will not like that. But some people say, the government will try to ban it. Well, look, they banned mushrooms in was it late 60s? It didn't stop anything, and it's still banned to this day. And we're doing a psychedelic revolution. Like everyone I know, is talking about it. And they try to ban. If the government said no more crypto today, no one's going to stop working on it. And everyone just starts, all right, well, I'll just do it in Canada now. I'll just engineer there. No big deal.
It'll only increase the value of it, and because it'll make it more scarce. And it's, I've had an argument with people like, and random people online, whatever. But I've had an argument with someone who, I just commented buy Bitcoin on some sort of like the world's falling apart fucking scare tactic clickbait. And he was like some, gun lover kind of fucking conservative that was like, whatever. And he was like, oh, that's bullshit. Buy gold. Gold and bullets is all you need. And then it turned into some argument. But he was like, well, what are you going to do when your Bitcoin's made illegal? And I was like, probably the same thing you're going to do when your guns are made illegal, man. I'm still going to fucking have it, like. Yeah,
exactly. You're right. You're right.
It's the same thing. Like it's shown there was a period, like early 2018, after I rode that fucking altcoin bullshit dumbass market and thought like, this is the future and blah, blah, blah. There was a moment after that all came crashing down and, I watched my portfolio blow up and whatever.
Yeah, we all did.
There was a period I was like, God damn it, this is another fucking thing that I fell for and whatever, but at that point, and then, I took money out to get my investment out and then was like, I'm just going to play with fucking house money the rest of the way. And that's kind of how I've been. I've put little bits in here and there or whatever, but like for the most part, most of my portfolio now is free money, but there was a couple months where I was like, I was embarrassed to have even fucking said anything about it,
Yeah. I'm with you. I was always, I watched the market crash down after December 2017, and obviously I had friends going, hey man, don't jump off a bridge. I'm like, no, I'm good, because in my mind, I'm like, this is just trading, and price is nothing more than psychology. It's just more sellers than buyers, or more buyers than sellers. That's the only difference between the price going up and down. That is it. And I knew it was a psychological issue. And tying it to mushrooms, that's a psychological medicine, right? So there's that very interesting link of, this is a network where it's heavily psychologically scoped, much like mushrooms and so forth. And I'm like, it's going to be fine. and give it a few years. The mycelium like network of Bitcoin is just going to grow, and it will expand, and it'll get bigger, and it'll get stronger, and you're going to start getting these fruits that pop up here and there, and it's going to be fantastic. And I'm just buying. One quick thing about you mentioned about the guy saying, well, if they ban Bitcoin, and he said about banning gold. They banned gold in America in the what was it? Right around the Great Depression, I believe. I could have the story wrong, but I believe the story was private possession of gold was you were forced to sell at market rate. The government then cut the price. I think they cut the price by a certain amount, which caused an international influx of money to buy up all this cheap gold, which was like pulling the starter on a motorcycle or something, or a weed eater or something. And that's what kickstarted the economy again, was a massive influx of money coming in, and that movement of cash. So they absolutely ban gold ownership, just like they could ban anything else. And so that guy could, he'd still be stuck. He wouldn't be able to walk down to Walmart and carve a chunk of gold out of his molar, and give it for beans.
Well, and then see, the thing is with the price of gold, that actually crashed it. What made it really skyrocket to where it's at today was the gold ETF introduction. I think it was about 20 to 25 years later, if you look at the price of gold. And that's why I could see that same fucking thing playing out, to where I don't see him banning Bitcoin, but I see him saying like there has to be third-party transactions. There has to be, and they kind of force like legal transactions without Mimblewimble or without whatever, anything on network has to go through accredited holders, and I think what you'll see then, that's when the ETF will get passed, and that's when Bitcoin will blow up in price, and it's the same thing.
I do worry about, on an ETF, there's only one detail about it, and that is the U.S. stock market and equities trading. They're allowed to do this thing called rehypothecation, which means they're allowed to sell more than they own, like Apple stock. Let's say a company has 1,000 Apple stock shares. They can sell like 1.4 or 1.5. And I hope that they can't do that with Bitcoin, because that'll help. That might press. They could sell more Bitcoin than they actually own, which kind of represses the price a little bit, but it kind of inflates the. But I think smart people kind of watch that. And the cool thing about Bitcoin is this: let's say the government allowed an ETF in or whatever, and they start doing super manipulation. We, like me, you, everyone else, us individuals, we're the engineers for Bitcoin, and we can patch Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't static. It's a constant software upgrade. We can change the node structure and change the details and do a hard fork or a soft fork, and boom, the network's different. And we could be the manipulators.
That is awesome. That's where it's totally different than gold. And I don't know how much you listen to like Pompliano and Adam Schiff, whatever, fucking
Peter Schiff.
I don't know how much you listen to that, but that's where like everything he says, I totally fucking agree with, as far as like, the banks collapsing and all of that. But it comes down to, he does not fucking understand what Bitcoin is. And so all of his love for gold is correct, except for the fact that we are a hive mind fucking internet based world now. And gold, I don't care how much fucking websites he puts up where you can buy gold and it's, stored in some place in Toronto for you and whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. That's not the same thing as, having a fucking ledger wallet with your Bitcoin on it, and it's so different, and he doesn't get it. And like, I really wish someone could really come at him with the technical aspect, because every time they debate him with Bitcoin versus gold, they're talking past each other, because they're arguing market stuff, but they both see eye to eye, but he doesn't understand the technical aspect.
Exactly. And Peter Schiff does a lot of, he has that weird gold credit card of his that he's like, yeah, I can pay with gold because I have this weird credit card that's connected to it. Well, that's just going through either Visa or MasterCard's network, right? And those go through FinCEN, and which is the financial intelligence network. And there are those of us who don't want the government babysitting everything we do. And I don't have anything to hide. I don't really, the worst I've ever done in the world is grown a few mushrooms, and that's it, and I didn't use any credit card. There's no record of that.
Right.
And, but at the same time, I still don't really like them. And not only that, marketing engines take all your data, they sell that data and whatnot. So yeah, you're right. He might be able to use it, but he doesn't understand the market value of Bitcoin is more than just the ability to make transactions. It's the ability to choose your own adventure. You can use it any way you want. You can give it to anyone. It's completely uncensorable money. I can give that money to anyone in the world, and that person can do anything with it yet again.
Yeah.
And how awesome is that?
Yeah. Well, and he always says it's not backed by anything, it's not made of anything, it's thin air, it's just files. And then I think in the I heard someone, and it's not just him. That's a common argument. I for anyone listening that doesn't know who the fuck we're talking about, it's like this economic talking head that comes on shows and says that the banks are about to collapse and stuff like that. So buy gold from his company. But
of course, a scare tactic.
But that mentality that he has, and a lot of people share, of Bitcoin's not backed by anything. It's just air. It's just files. Well, give me your phone and let me factory reset it, and then tell me files aren't worth nothing. Like files are fucking something now, and Bitcoin is definitely that. And I mean, I don't understand the technical component of mining, but I understand why proof of work and the electricity and I don't buy into that, that's gonna speed up global warming and stuff like that. That's fucking scare tactics. But I understand that there does need to be a cost to produce them, to give it its value. And that actually has more backing, is more related to that gold standard we used to have than fiat currency. And so explain, I know, but what's your explanation of what fiat currency is? Because I know it's all based on debt.
Yeah. So fiat currency is essentially the paper money that we pass around. And at one time, and I looked at this just the other day, and it wasn't there, but it wasn't long ago. It was like a year ago. The U.S. Treasury's website, right on their front page, said the value of the Treasury notes you pass back and forth, doesn't matter what the face value is, $1, a $5, a $10, a $20. They said the value of it was only based on the two participants trading it. Whatever they felt was the value. If I want to sell my car for $5, I can. If I want to sell my house for $1,000, I can. The value of that unit of exchange is purely what the individuals deem at that moment. And with fiat like that, it's so superfluous. However you pronounce it, superfluous. Yes, that one. It has when we say no backing, it used to have gold backing until Nixon nixed that, and now the only backing would technically be warfare by bullying other nations and so forth. And look, like I said, I was military, I'm a defense contractor. I understood and I knew why we were in countries. I knew, and I fully supported a lot of the things that we've done that may have been unpopular and so forth. And I knew a lot of the missions and understood them because I was part of them. But I do agree that the fiat currency, the actual money we hand back and forth, the only backing is just a signature of the government. But there's nothing intrinsic about it. If I see a dollar on the ground, it's literally just a face value piece of paper, and an individual may or may not give me $1's worth of value in exchange. Now, with a cryptocurrency, you don't have to just have the exchange of the face value of the cryptocurrency. You can exchange assets. You can exchange any type of information encoded in the blockchain. So I could certainly have, there's a cryptocurrency called 0x, and 0x can encode like an Apple stock in it, right? So now I have it in my little digital wallet on my phone, and I can say, hey man, I'll give you an Apple stock for, for a ride to the airport or whatever, and I could pass an Apple stock using a cryptocurrency, and it's a valid Apple stock. And we've never been able to pass stocks around like that. Or I could encode records, like special like a will or something like that. Well, that has value. Certainly has value on the person who who's still alive, who needs it, who wants to get that the output of the will. Fiat, it's like Latin for like to decree or something like that. So it doesn't have any instinctive element to it. Yeah. You can't reprogram the dollar bill. You can't make it do any funny tricks. You can't encode anything in it. It's hard to transmit. I mean, PayPal's relatively new when you think about it.
Right. I mean, it's the thing that a grocery store gives you to fucking clean their bathrooms, and that's what fucking matters. It's what your fucking cell phone bill will accept as payment, and so there's so much argument, and you touched on it there about like not being able to trade stocks peer to peer. There's so much argument especially when it comes to the regulation, but also the valuation of Bitcoin, of like, is it a commodity? Is it an asset? Is it a currency? Is it a what? Yeah. But the problem is it's Bitcoin. It's not any of those. It's Bitcoin. It's making history. It's not following it. And that's so hard to speculate. It's so hard to understand. But it's taken me to this point. I'm probably going on 3 years of being a crypto person. It's gotten to this point to where I realize now that the dollar amount, the market value of Bitcoin, says far more about the US dollar than it does Bitcoin.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the other thing, like, if you take your US dollars, bank accounts and all that, just look at how much of a pain in the ass it is to move that stuff around. Like if for whatever reason I need to give all my bank account assets to someone else, it can be pretty difficult if it's sizable. And there's trigger amounts. I think it's like $10,000. I cause a FinCEN trigger amount, or 20,000, something like that. And IRS certainly is like looking at everything. And with Bitcoin, all I have to do is write down my little secret password, and I just put it on a piece of paper and push it across the table and hand it to someone else, and that's all they need. And now they're the owner of that asset. And that's it. That's how simple it is. And no one knows. I mean, there's nothing, there's I didn't have to ask anyone's permission, and it was instant. And I did it in the middle of the night on a Saturday night. I don't have to wait till Monday morning. I don't have to wait 3 days for a bank transfer. I don't have to get bank permission if it's sizable amounts. The value of Bitcoin is not the value in dollars. It's the value of the ability to do stuff with it. And to me, that's the utilitarian nature of it, is just amazing. And it's always being upgraded. The US dollar has not been upgraded since it was developed. It's still a piece of paper with a president's face on the front and a 1 on it. And that's it. That is all you can do with it. But with Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies out there, you can do some cool stuff. There's decentralized markets. There's prediction markets, which are technically illegal in America. But prediction markets allow millions and millions of people to essentially bet on the outcome of an event. And mathematically, when you have prediction markets, a mass amount of people, like 1 million people, looking at a problem or an output, they tend to be way statistically correct, like extraordinarily correct. And that's why they're kind of banned, because you can really game that. Like, you can really game that hard, and we kind of see that already in some of the stuff, which kind of makes some of it fun. But you can do prediction markets with it.
That's what
Augur,
right? Yeah,
Augur. Yeah. So a prediction market would be who's going to win the presidential race, right? And anyone can put a prediction market in. So if you think Trump is going to win, you would probably, you'd put like a small prediction market out and see where the prediction market people are going and go, okay, well, I think that's the answer. And then you do a big bet on the opposite side in the prediction market in order for a hedge, so you can win either side of the thing. So it's an interesting game theory there. And I really like it. The other thing about Bitcoin is the monetary policy of it algorithmically, mathematically keep it from inflating. Like the US dollar loses 2% of its value every year, and Bitcoin is the exact opposite mathematically. So it's quadratically decreased volume of creation over, and the last crypto or Bitcoin will be mined like 2130. So we've got a long way to go before we even see the last Bitcoin. And it's super fascinating that unlike the Fed that can print billions and trillions of dollars at will and reduce your amount, the amount of money you have in your bank account, if you don't put any money in or take any money out, will be worth less in 5 years than it is now. And unlike Bitcoin, it's the other way around. While its conversion to the US dollar might be down just because of some weird market factor, the Bitcoin itself, the utilitarian value actually goes up, and it's constantly going up. So I really like that fact about it. You can't change that. It's mathematically bound. And unlike the fiat, they can, the Fed can change anything they want at any time. Tomorrow they could just say, the $5 bill is no longer valid. Yeah. And now we're all hosed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it goes to show, I forgot. I'm quoting some comedian, but I can't remember who.
Sure.
They spend taxpayer dollars to advertise the new 20. That's what our money is. It's like we that's part of the budget of a department of the government to create new money, destroy the old ones that were in everyone's pockets and up everyone's nose and paid for everyone's hookers. That money, they're just like, we're going to burn that. We got new ones. Also, here's a marketing campaign for it. Like, we have a fucking choice. Like, there's, yeah. And so it sucks because, like, so many people live paycheck to paycheck. I get it. I live like past that. I'm like, I live paycheck to next year's paycheck, but like it's, it's, I get it. Like you only have to budget, like you only make this much and you can only work this much and you can only get that. And I know it's so hard for people to understand. Like, I can't buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and then have it be worth 50. Like, I can't lose $50. I get it, but it's you have to get over that dollar value. And I always saw it as a meme. I always saw it as a whatever. But the one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin idea is important.
Yes.
Because since then I have
absolutely.
done. It's like if I get 0.02 Bitcoin in a donation to the YouTube channel or whatever, like it's like, oh fuck, that's awesome. Even though it's $20, $100, like it's like that idea of stacking sats, man. It's like I try to scrimp and save, and if someone gives me $50 or okay, if someone gives me cash, I usually end up spending that. But if someone's like, can I Venmo you that? I'll be like, yeah. And I Venmo that to Square and I buy Bitcoin.
Right.
And
exactly.
Like if I'm, now is a little different that I've been working and getting an actual paycheck. But before, when I was just making $50 here or there for doing something or whatever, or selling a pedal online or anything I had that was already digital money, instead of like transferring it to PayPal and putting it in my bank account, I'm like, I'm going to transfer it to fucking Coinbase or Abra or whatever. There's so many options to turn pocket change into crypto. And this year that no one's talking about crypto until like right now, pretty much, until the Chinese president, like you said, mentioned it. Now I'm starting to see it. It's starting to get Googled more. Just from January to now, I mean, my portfolios went up 70. Well, no, it's doubled, more than doubled. And I haven't been trading or nothing. And I haven't had money all year until like the last 2 months, And so like it's been out of the spotlight, and that seems to be where it grows. Like it kind of it's the spotlight's bad for it, But I kind of mention it every now and then on the podcast and everything, or YouTube videos, and like it kind of goes over like a fucking fart in church most of the time. But it's really important, and I'm glad to hear you talk about it with the same gusto. I'm glad to hear you've got fucking a master's degree in this shit. Like I don't know anything. Like I told you before we were recording, my Windows 7 machine was updating for the second hour of today. Like I'm not a tech geek, but I'm a forward thinker, and like, dude, people, this isn't a scam where people are just trying to fucking make money off of people. Like, people are speculating on something that is generally agreed upon is going to fucking change the world,
Yeah. This is a cryptographic revolution, and it actually solved a mathematical problem that was unsolvable up until 2008, and that was the Byzantine kings problem, where it has to do with being able to double spend and identify whether one Bitcoin was actually that Bitcoin. And, by having that solution applied to finances was just an astonishing revolution in financial networks that right now it's still so low level that the average everyday person just it doesn't quite hit them, but it's going to it's going to smack people right upside the head here in the next 5 to 10 years, to the point where if you don't have, it's kind of like not having an email address. If you don't have that, you're going to be lost. You're not going to be engaged. You're not going to be able to engage in public financial networks and so forth. And big banks, all the big banks are playing with it. Even JP Morgan was talking about making their own coin. I mean, these, once the banks have their fingers in it, I don't think it's possible. They have too much money and lobbyists to allow the government to ban their new toy. So I don't think it'll ever get banned. And to your point about taking small amounts of Satoshis, I get paid to do tutoring. A friend of mine has me tutor his kid, and I just teach him computer hacking and whatnot, just like good, fun, wholesome type computer geekery stuff. And it's like $25 of Bitcoin. Well, that's like 200,000 Satoshis, which is a Satoshi is like the penny of a Bitcoin. There's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. And, I get like 240,000, 250,000 Satoshis or whatever that is. And the goal, the kind of the unwritten goal of a lot of people like myself is one day it's going to be one Satoshi per dollar. Yeah. Now think about that. I'm getting like 250,000 Satoshis every hour when I'm doing this. And imagine that in about 5 to 10 years. And, now I have like, a couple 100 million Satoshis. Yeah. And, now Jeff Bezos is asking me for a loan, so it's one of those things. Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible. Jack from Twitter, huge into Bitcoin. Yeah. Elon Musk mentioned on a tweet a long time ago, buy Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, these people know. People know.
Elon is like, he's the fucking engine of the world, dude. Like, I don't care what anyone thinks about him. Yeah. Like, the guy fucking created PayPal, which until now was the fucking, it was Visa, like, I mean, it was everything. And yeah, I don't know. It gets me, especially for someone like me that like doesn't fully understand computers. It's really bizarre that like I'm, aside from my sister has given me some money to buy Bitcoin, my parents gave me some money to buy Bitcoin, but other than that, like other than my very close friends and people I've met through this, podcast, YouTube and Discord and all that, everyone else in my life that I know is like, dude, that's fucking stupid. They're still stuck on January 2018, and they're like, he lost his ass. That's why he's back at work and all this stuff. Like, I know that people like have that thought in their head because, late in Bull Run 2017, I was on Facebook like, y'all are stupid if you're fucking not making money on this, blah, 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 talking so much shit. And then to see that, to where I still talk about it, but I talk about kind of, I talk about, look what's going on with your bank. Not the bank that you fucking go to the ATM, but the fucking bank that owns your mortgage. The bank that fucking owns your company that you work for. Look, like people need to look past the bank on the corner and look at the bank that's in the center of fucking everything. And that's one thing people don't realize about Bitcoin is like, don't look at its fluctuation. Look at the global economy since it's been around. It came out of the last recession, which is fucking distant history now, due to how well the stock market has done since then, and how well everything is done. All the countries, all the global currencies have done well. That no time in history has that ever went on forever. It has always stopped.
There's always cycles,
right? And we don't know what Bitcoin is going to do in that. We've seen what it can do when everything else is doing well, and it's designed to do well when everything else is doing bad. So imagine what the fuck it'll do when the dollar loses its global reserve status to where like other currencies aren't valued in dollars.
Right. Yeah. That's going to be an interesting moment.
See, right.
Yeah. Especially China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it'll switch to Bitcoin. I'm betting that it will. But I'm totally open to the idea that like another currency will come up, or like you mentioned, the JP Morgan fucking just takes over the world, and their coin, their dollar is what other like the euro probably wanted to be that, but it wasn't able to overtake the dollar. It could be Libra with Facebook or whatever. I just think it'll be Bitcoin, and it comes down to, like you said, that it solved this revolutionary problem, and it got so much clout just from that being the first one through that door. And on top of that, also the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto is an anonymous person or people is so important, because no one can sue anything. No one can fucking take anyone to court and question them and fuck with it. It is going to be speculation forever, and it will just always hold its value because of that. That value may be different from week to week, but from year to year, it's gonna fucking always kind of, the mystique is always going to carry its value. And it almost has more value
right.
than the electricity used in the mining that kind of backs it. But I think the mystique is the key. And that's why, I've been into alts and altcoins and all that, and I do like a lot of those. We probably don't have enough time to really talk about all that, but it's like it always comes back to that Bitcoin for me, to where exactly. That's where I decided early this year. I'm like, I have to have one, like, that's it. Like, and I've got more than that now, but I was like, I want to always have one, like, and just to have it, because like, I don't know where this is going, but it's so much bigger than I can understand, and that most people I know can understand, which means like, I mean, fuck, one of them is worth like way more than my car. And so for people like Peter Schiff to be like, it's nothing, it's not backed in anything. It's like, okay, well, I couldn't sell my car and get one,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an expensive piece of nothing.
Yeah. And for those who are listening may not know, you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of one, all the way down to a millionth of a penny or so. So you can buy little pieces of it as you can, and control that wealth and utility any way you want. And these networks that are decentralized and not controlled by anyone are just so powerful, and it is almost impossible to knock down unless there is some super hyper strange vulnerability in the Bitcoin blockchain, which, I'm a computer security consultant. That's what I do. And maybe there is, but it's the world's largest bug bounty. You're looking at billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, and you better believe hackers are trying to get into that all the time, and they haven't in over 10 years. They haven't.
It's never been hacked, and all of our credit card companies have all been hacked within the last 2 years or whatever. So like, and we carry all those around, and they are our life. Our credit score is our life. So like, it's if you have faith in that, you have to have faith in Bitcoin, and that's
absolutely,
that's where I've come around to,
Absolutely. And vendors, any vendor who uses credit cards, your margins for your product might only be 10%. Well, you're losing 2 to 3% on your on all your transaction fees, and then on top of that, if I wanted to be a jerk, I can just call my bank and say, I didn't buy that. And banks will always bend over backwards for you, and they'll get a charge back to the vendor, and the vendor gets hosed.
Yeah.
He lost his product and he loses his money.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get that with crypto. Crypto solves all that.
Yeah.
There's no, you can't take your money back, none of that stuff. And it's a guaranteed connection. Like, you get your money. When you're the vendor, you literally see the money show up in your wallet, and it's yours permanently.
Yeah.
And it's so so much secure for both the patrons and a vendor, and also just privacy. You trade between each other, and no one has to know what you're up to.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's a a fascinating world. And I come from a military background that worked on crypto systems, and we were doing some pretty crazy stuff in the 90s with crypto that I'm just now seeing, kind of making its way out now. And it's nice seeing, we're using modern cryptographic algorithms and public key encryption that was pretty exotic back then. And so we're using military grade. When they say military grade encryption, there's a lot of that out there right now that you're using for this stuff. And so there's no reason to be afraid of it. It's all open source. You can look at the code yourself right now. You don't even have to be a coder. You can just look at it, and you can follow the change logs. Every few months, Bitcoin kicks out a new update, and you can follow that along, and it'll say, updated this and fixed that, and new capability of this, and it's just an awesome thing to follow. And my mom uses it. I mean, my mom's like 60 something years old. She thinks Bitcoin's awesome.
That's awesome.
And yeah. And you can always just buy Bitcoin today, then use it 2 minutes later. It's not like the Bitcoin price is going to spike out or disappear. You can just buy it and immediately use it.
Yeah.
And she uses it online all the time, and she likes it better than her credit cards. She's on Social Security. She doesn't have the energy or the funds to worry about, chargebacks if she's selling something or someone hacking her credit card. Now she has to deal with all that. She's old. She doesn't really, not saying 60-year-olds are old, but I'm just saying, she's at that age. She doesn't want to deal with any of that.
Well, yeah. And a lot of, I mean, even if the ease is the same or whatever, a lot of websites offer a discount,
absolutely,
at least free shipping or whatever, I've bought
Overstock and jet.com.
Yeah. But I mean,
I like it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great. Well, man, we're coming up on 2 hours. I think this is
okay.
Probably the longest podcast we've had, and I could talk crypto all night.
Me too.
We've either gotten some converts or scared everyone off the podcast forever. So I don't know, but
it's almost 2 episodes basically.
I know. I mean, we didn't even let Stan talk. So
good, man.
Oh yeah, sorry, Stan.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating stuff, and I really appreciate the chance to tell my story, and hope that people who are new to psychedelics take some of my lessons learned and apply it to their attempts, and don't be afraid. Just go really slow and do your studies, and really research it. You can go to PubMed and research it, and you'll be 100% fine. And if you jump into crypto, just same thing. Just study it a little bit, and then dip your toes in just a little tiny bit. It's the exact same formula, and you'll be fine there too.
Yeah. And we didn't mention it at the start, but Ridgeback contacted us, but also he's been on our Discord for a while, as kind of just a lurker for the most part, but I've seen you post every now and then. But just a plug for the Discord, like, anyone that's been listening and hears us talk about it and hasn't gotten on there, I mean, it's like part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
good people on there.
Yeah. And even if you don't post anything, like, I'm sure you've read some good stories and whatever on there, and it helped you, people talk about growing. I'm sure has helped you with stuff, and it's just really good. And it's a good way to like already get in our community we got going on here, and throw your story in the ring and come on the podcast. That's kind of the progression was here, and I think it's been a great episode. So I thank you so much for coming on, man. And
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for telling your story, and thanks for doing everything you're doing, man.
You bet. And thank you for the opportunity. And it's really been a lot of fun, and really like the podcast, and it's great stuff. Yeah. And definitely go join the Discord. Really good people on there. I really like the people on there. They're really fun to talk to. It's good stuff.
Awesome. As always, thank you for listening to the Help Find the Others podcast. Please don't forget to check out our Discord server to connect with our growing community. The link to join can be found in the description. And if you feel like donating to our channel to help us grow, a link to our Patreon can also be found in the description, as well as some cryptocurrency wallet addresses. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about these topics, please email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com. If you would like to leave a voicemail or a text message question for a future episode, Stan, what's that number again?
567-233-1335.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And until next time, let's help find the others.